Are you searching for a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the world? Do you yearn for more balance, more peace, and purpose in your life? Well, look no further than the Intuitive Revolution podcast, your trusted source for holistic insights and intuitive guidance. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli, and I am ready to take you on a journey to inner peace and balanced well-being.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Welcome back to the Intuitive Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli. Today I have Rob Wentz with us. He's got some very impactful things about getting people unstuck, getting them on the right path. And so I'm super, super excited to learn a little more about him. I was actually on his podcast a few weeks ago. Has a really amazing podcast you guys should check out as well too. But I'm so excited that you're here, Rob. Welcome to the show.
It's wonderful to be here, Alicia. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we got a chance to connect again. Just excited to share today.
So take us back a little bit tell us about your history. Tell us about your life and how you got into doing this. Because I know most people don't just wake up one day and be like, you know what? I think this is what I want to do. You typically have a story behind you doing the work that you're doing.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I'm a leadership and communication coach, and I never even envisioned that being something that I would do with my life up until maybe like 4 years ago. It wasn't even in the thought process. Like that was not even a thought. So growing up, I loved radio broadcasting. So I was in radio for 20 years. I started when I was 15 and just kind of worked my way up, worked on a bunch of different radio stations. Was like a night show host, afternoon host. I was a program director, which means I kind of like programmed and I ran radio stations, a music director. So I'd like choose all the music. I was involved in sales, and then I became a morning show host for a number of years. So that was most of my life, right? It was radio broadcasting. And looking back in time, I didn't realize it then, but when I was young, I was very introverted, shy, I didn't know who I was. I did not want to be a leader. I'll tell you that much. The last thing I wanted to be was a leader for anything because it was scary. I was like, what is that even? That was never even a word that was in my head until maybe 8 to 10 years ago. And looking back over, my career in radio, the reason why I got into radio, and I didn't know this then, right? I had like a version of me inside of me that needed to come out of my shell, I guess you could say. And radio taught me how to do that over the course of so many years. And through that journey, I learned a lot about myself that I didn't even realize it was happening at the time. And I believe if you look back, hindsight 2020, you can see all the connections that brought you to where you are today. But whenever I was going through it, I didn't know. So I left radio in 2017. I started a digital marketing company, ran that for a few years. And then I was going through a separation and divorce for like 3 years, long stint. And through that process, I really started to, first of all, I was doing a podcast. I met a coach who was like, I did a podcast with her. Her name was Peggy Caruso. And she said to me, I think you'd be a really good coach. If you ever want to think about doing that, I would love to train you in that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. A year went by. I was really lost. It was like 2020. It was early 21, I think. And I was like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? Where am I supposed to be going? I feel like I'm very lost. I felt like I was very stuck, right? My podcast is called The Unstuck Movement. And Peggy's name popped in my head. And I'm like, I should give her a call. She said I'd be a great coach. And that sounds like something I'd like to do. And so I reached out to her. We had a talk. I was like, let's do this. She trained me. We went through like a year training in about 7 months. And it led me to this place of life coaching and then leadership coaching, communication coaching. And unknowingly, I was this entire time walking into this place that I'm at right now. Now, of course, I still do the podcast because I still want to have broadcasting in my life because that was a big component of most of my life. And I love doing that. And I love communicating. But the leadership part was realizing as my life was kind of taking this strange turn of like, I don't know where I'm going or what I'm supposed to be doing. Why didn't I know? Because I wasn't leading myself. I was letting other people and other circumstances lead me. And so that led me to take ownership of my own life and then also realizing I would love to help other people and businesses, organizations know how to be great leaders because as I'm learning this for myself and I know how powerful it is for me, how powerful it would be for somebody else also. And that in a nutshell.
That's very interesting. I love that you were in broadcasting and you're still doing some type of broadcasting. It's kind of like you're still following your passion, but you've really escalated it to a bigger audience, I guess obviously a bigger audience, but you've escalated it more into a bigger purpose.
It has, yeah. When I was doing radio before, it didn't, well, the purpose was to make me feel good, right? That was the whole purpose, was to satisfy me. And so I had to flip it like, okay, so I want to have a platform that helps people, like how to get unstuck. It helps people with those stories. It helps the people that come on the show, and it helps me. It's a win-win all around. And I look at it from that point of view. But something I realized when I started off my coaching was like, I realized there's a part missing here. There's something missing in my life that brings me joy. I was just having an episode with a woman today, and she was talking about fulfillment, right? And I felt I knew coaching was the right place for me to be, but I felt unfulfilled because I wasn't using like the gifts that I have. And so I was just brainstorming, praying about it, meditating, like, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I missing here? And the podcast, like, you're not doing broadcasting. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do broadcasting, I can't just be whatever. It's got to have a purpose to it. And at this point in time, I was very stuck going through this like divorce process. And I was like, wow, I need to get unstuck. People need to get unstuck. Unstuck's a powerful word. So I started the podcast, the Unstuck Movement, which goes along with the coaching, ties perfectly into that, but also was my outlet to like do the thing that gives me energy and excites me, and it's just fun. I mean, that doing a podcast so much. Is fun.
Tell people, like, selfishly, I get like free coaching in a way. You get to learn, I call it selfishly, exactly, but I'm also, but it's like you get to learn so much cool stuff from other people, and you find different perspectives and things to apply. Talk to us a little bit about Unstuck. True. What is that? What are some things? I know there's a lot of people, especially in society today, and the things we're going through in the world. There's a lot of people that are really stuck, and they don't know how to take that next step. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. Well, something that I do with the podcast, and I listen for every episode, I listen for themes that come up, because there's themes that show up no matter if the person was stuck in a personal thing, if they were stuck in a professional thing, if it was spiritually being stuck or whatever it was. So I started to write down all these different themes, and eventually they'll become a book or something, or a bunch of different things along the way. But so some of the things that I noticed, asking deeper questions, asking better questions creates bigger breakthrough, because I'm all about finding breakthrough for your life or your business, right? So asking better questions, asking deeper questions is so powerful. Another one is turning your mess into your message, right? So we all have a mess. Everybody has a mess somewhere in their life. When you work through the mess, it becomes a message that you use to help other people. So where is the mess in your life? How can you turn it into a message that helps others? How can you take your baggage and turn it into luggage, right? Because our baggage is stuff that we drag around with us that weighs us down. Luggage is stuff that we bring with us that helps us in the situations we're in. You think about going on vacation, your luggage is there to help you. You need your luggage. You don't need baggage, right? So how do you turn the baggage into luggage? Patience plus perseverance is another huge one. To get unstuck, you've got to be patient, but you've also got to continue to persevere. If I don't persevere and I'm just patient, nothing ever gets done. That's called procrastination. If I don't have any patience and I try to persevere, that's called like forcing everything. And those two things work really well together. Vision is everything, right? So vision gets rid of your problems. Vision makes a problem like it's no longer a roadblock. It's a stepping stone to where you need to go. But you have to have a very clear vision to see your problems as potential. So that's one for me that I find comes up over and over and over again, because that's so true. The things that I go through, stress is always the indicator, right? So this stress is a signal. Fear is a signal. This is a good thing. I need to tackle this thing to get to the next stage of where I want to go. One of the ones recently that's been so good, Alicia, is fear and purpose, okay? If you have a lot of fear, you lack purpose. The more clear you become on your purpose, the less fear you have. So when we talk about purpose so much, and it can get kind of diluted, but it's really true that the stronger my purpose becomes, and when you know something inside and out, you just know it. You don't really need a reason why you don't need to explain and defend this thing, right? Because you know it so deeply inside of you that it's true. When that purpose becomes super strong and super clear, then fear just disappears, because you meet people with conviction. They have conviction because they know. And hopefully that conviction is backed by something. If not, it's just arrogance or delusion, right? But I just love that purpose. Purpose and fear, that's so huge. And everything is simple, right? The best solutions, the biggest breakthroughs are simple, but simple is almost never easy.
Yeah.
But it's simple, right? Simple is like every single day waking up. I've been getting a cold shower every day for a couple of years. It's never easy. I never want to do it every single day, but it's so simple. I just turn the water the opposite direction and it has a profound effect, but I literally never want to do it. So it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Those are a couple.
It almost takes some courage to get into that shower too. But we already have the courage inside of us. I mean, I know I've been trying to do sort of the same thing. I love hot showers. I mean, like scalding. My husband's like, "How do you stand this?" I'm like, "I love it, scalding hot showers." But just turning it and it's like a little bit degree.
Yeah, women take the hottest showers.
That's what
women take the hottest showers. My wife, she'll drain the hot water tank in one shower. I'm like, what is happening?
I know.
Like, how are you alive?
It just feels so amazing to me. And I guess maybe it's our biological hormone, something going on in women that we do that. Yes. But it's like I've started to, when I first started to turn it down just a dial, just a little bit. So I'm not exactly shocking myself where I'm not going to come back the next day and do it. But it's like these little baby steps that I've taken, especially, and I feel like that's really worked well with personally myself and for clients and people that I've spoken with. What's your take on that? Like taking baby steps.
As far as what?
You know, it's like we want to find a purpose, and then all of a sudden it's like the next day we have to just go out and we have to just grind it out. It's like we're expected to live into the purpose the next day after we discovered it.
Have you ever?
Oh, you're good.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Have you ever seen the movie What About? Have you ever seen the movie What About Bob with Bill Murray from back in the day? So he's in Richard Dreyfuss's psychiatrist office, and Richard Dreyfuss says, "Bob, just take baby steps." And Bob just literally takes these tiny little baby steps all around the office. And it's real funny and goofy, but baby steps are everything. It's like these tiny little pieces to the puzzle. I love the book The Slight Edge, which is a lot like the book Atomic Habits, right? And it's just simple daily disciplines, things that are super easy to do. They're also super easy not to do. And in the moments, they don't look like they're actually doing anything, but they compound interest over time. And that compound interest will determine whether you're on the upswing or you're on the downswing of life. They all add together. And so your moments matter. The words that you use matter. The actions that you take on a daily basis, when you recorrect your own thoughts, like, no, I don't think that, I think this, and you change the way that you tell yourself that you think, those little things are all these tiny little super small baby steps. Like what we have, like 80,000 thoughts a day, 90% are the same thoughts every single day. Stepping in and being aware and changing those, I mean, that's the baby steps are the building blocks to everything. It's amazing to think that literally every single thought you have throughout the day matters, and it's impossible to track every single thought because there's too many. So you have to build in these new systems and patterns of your attitude to change the way you think, because it can be really, really daunting to change everything about you. But if you can fundamentally change core things about you, it can have it. Like the questions that you ask yourself, that's a fundamental one. Instead of asking when you screw something up, I had a coach once, he said, be fascinated, not frustrated. And I fail at this one every day. Every day I fail, especially when it comes to the internet and technology. Being fascinated by oh, why isn't this working right now? Instead of smashing your hands off the desk. You know what I mean? Not saying I always do it correctly, but that's one. It's simple little things of asking yourself better questions. Not why does everything suck, but how could I make this better? Just
it's like getting into the curiosity like a child would. I mean, a 2-year-old, yes, they do get angry and stuff, frustrated, but then they're kind of like, why is this not working? But the curiosity of it is just fantastic. They're so curious of everything, of all the what's going on in life. They're not questioning. And so it's almost like getting back to that childlike curiosity in ourselves can bring up so many amazing opportunities and so many amazing things that come to us.
100%. And I think too, like I was saying earlier about feeling like there was something missing with my life, with my career, and then sitting down and asking that question, like, what's not right? What is missing here? Getting curious about it led to the podcast, which has opened so many doors. It's been incredible. And also just given me so much joy, so much more joy throughout the day and what I do. But that was a simple asking a question, but then being curious and paying attention, but then also taking action. And that's the other part. We can ask a lot of great questions and get great answers, but the differentiating, huge separating factor is taking action and actually executing on
Yeah.
the things that
And
you
it's
know
kind of like
you should
reading.
do.
So you can get so trapped into reading, especially guys. I'm sure, I don't know if you understand, but being a coach, it's like you get trapped into the courses and get trapped into all the knowledge and all the books you have to read. But then we don't apply those. And we're just got to learn more and more and more and more and more. And there comes a time it's where like you got to stop and apply what you already know and to move forward, take those actionable steps with it.
Yeah, it's like, eventually it becomes analysis paralysis. And it's just, it feels good to learn. It feels good to, oh, I'm learning. I have all this information. Well, what the heck are you doing with it? And then I don't know if you've experienced this, Alicia, but as personal development can become toxic, where I was listening to way too many people with way too many conflicting answers that left me like, what am I supposed to do? So literally what I did was I backed off of all of it. I stopped watching and listening to anybody until I figured myself out. Then I could dive back in, but I had too much going on in my head. Too many things were conflicting for me that I was like, this isn't right. Like I don't need to spend any more money. I don't need to watch any more quote unquote gurus. Not that the information was bad. It was really good. But before you learn who you are, before you can take somebody else's advice, you've got to know who you are and
I
how to
totally
apply it to
agree
your
with
life.
that. I mean, we get so inundated with you should do something this way and but this way, but this way, but this way, and at the end, that's where paralysis starts to take place. Is we just kind of shut down. It's like, what direction do we take? And then we're so afraid to make the wrong decision. Instead of going back into and I call it intuition, going back intuitively, like what do I feel like it's right for me, for my path going forward? Doesn't mean that it's right for someone else. I actually heard a podcast the other day. Made a lot of sense. It's like you see all these people who are saying how to make a bunch of all this money and stuff too. They're not making all that money because if they were, they wouldn't be giving away those secrets. And so it made a lot of sense. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense where you see all these people that push and push and push. And it's not to say that courses and like learning and stuff too, but it forces to a certain, this is the only way to do it. This is the only way to do this way, or only way you have to be. That's something that's like to me a red flag in anything that you should do in your life.
Some of those people online, because I've taken courses from people that I know are very successful, and the courses have been helpful. But it's also that's what worked for them. That's one thing, and I get bothered by somebody saying this is what works. Do this. There's certain occasions where this, like taking action, that's an easy one. Are you taking action? That works. Taking action works. But if you're telling me that your way is the only way and you figured it out for you. Maybe the person making the ad is a liar. I don't know. But even if they're telling the truth, they figured it out for them. Is that going to be my answer? No. Would it help steer me in the right direction? Possibly. Could it be a waste of money? Possibly. That's why you need that intuition and discernment to know what is right and what is right for me, especially. Because that can be the hardest one. Is this right for me?
I think I have maybe 3 or 4 I call leaders that I follow their paths, but not everything they do because it feels intuitively where I want to be in my life. And I think finding those people and those leaders that are I'm talking not your friend, not your peers that are equal, like those major people players, and following what the actions that they're doing, but intuitively, I think could be very, very beneficial to you. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
So talk to us about the 6 attitudes of brilliant communicators.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So over the years, I've been like, if you listen to people around you, you pick up on like where your gifts are, where your skills are. Obviously, I spent 20 years in broadcasting, and I've had people tell me like, you're a really good communicator. I've had wives of my friends tell me, can you help my husband? He's a terrible communicator. Can you help him communicate like you do? And I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it by any means, but I feel like I've found kind of a formula for what works for me and attitudes when you're going into conversations with people that can be, I don't know. It goes back to Dale Carnegie, right? How to win friends and influence people, being genuinely interested in other people. Number one, that's an attitude to have. I'm interested in actually learning about people. I want to know and I want to be able to connect with them. But the 6 attitudes that I wrote down were to be bold, be fresh, be pliable, precise, confident, and remarkable. So these all mean somewhat different things, but they all connect. Being bold is when I know I need to say something or there's an elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, be bold enough to talk about it. And most of the time, people who are bold, I shouldn't say everybody who's bold, but a lot of people who are bold kind of just blurt things out. I like to be a little more tactful. But it's always good just to get the thing out in the open. So I've always been more of a reserved I'll save what I need to say or want to say until it's really the perfect time. And there's other people who just blurt the thing out. And it always just feels so good when you say something that you know you need to say and nobody's saying it and you finally say it. It's a game changer. It's like stress relief. But knowing how to say it effectively. So being bold is huge. Being fresh, how do we communicate in the modern world most of the time? We usually are just talking at each other and we're not listening to each other. We're not asking questions, going back to asking questions, right? So being fresh in communication is like really paying attention, listening to people and asking questions and being genuinely curious and getting somewhere. So that's the fresh part that I find is missing from a lot of our society, especially online. Being pliable, you think about like leather. Leather is impossible to rip, but also super bendable. And so I think of pliability, like I've very much throughout my life tried to work off this people pleaser mentality where I'm always trying to bend to somebody else so they feel okay. But what I realized over the years, whenever you do that, you lose a sense of who you are because I'm just trying to please other people. So how can I be pliable in the sense that I don't lose, like the leather, I don't lose who I am, but I can bend myself to somebody else to connect with them. So I feel like I have a gift of being able to connect with almost anybody, but not losing who I am while connecting. And there's a balance there in doing that. Being precise. We all know somebody who, when they start talking, you're like, oh, dear God, like this is going to be 25 minutes and there's no escape, right? I know we all have somebody like that. I have a couple people in my life that I try to avoid them. I hate to say that, but also it's an opportunity to learn how to like get out of conversations. But I value being, I value being precise. Like, say what needs to be said in the least amount of words possible to get the point across. There's so much value in that. And then being confident, and confidence comes from knowingness. So knowing who you are, knowing why you are talking about what you're talking about, knowing what you want to get out of life, being intentional. That's where that confidence comes from. And I wasn't confident growing up. So stepping into this leadership part of my life is like being a leader means you're confident, you know what you want and you go for it. Doesn't mean you're rude, doesn't mean you run people over. You're not arrogant, you're confident. I think that's really good. And then being remarkable is all of these things coming together. When you communicate in all of these ways, you become a remarkable communicator. When you're a remarkable communicator, people come to you, they want to talk to you. You build incredible relationships you wouldn't create otherwise. And being remarkable is just being consistent in all of these things. So those are the 6 attitudes that I've found that when I meet somebody who is an incredible communicator, they exemplify these things. And when I meet somebody who's a bad communicator, they're usually missing all of these things. So, or they have 1 or 2 of these traits, but they're missing some other key traits in that situation. Like somebody who's bold but not fresh in communication is that person who they will say whatever needs to be said, but they never listen to anybody else. And the other opposite end of that is being fresh, somebody who listens to everybody else and asks lots of questions, but is never bold enough to say the thing that needs to be said, right? You got to have both of those traits.
Yeah, I think that goes deeper into more of not necessarily communication, but goes more into kind of an inner being and again, knowing who you are to be able to do that. Yeah. Without, not arrogance. Yeah.
Yeah. And so flipping this around then too, like communication is not outward before it's not outward before it's inward. Communication is inward before it's outward. So your communication with yourself determines how you talk to other people. So how do you talk to yourself? And applying these to you, because until you apply them to you, it's really hard to apply them outwardly to other
because you're sitting there still talking, figuring out what you're going to say next and what's going to go, because you're not even in the conversation. You're having a whole conversation. We've all done this with ourselves, and we're like, wait, what did they just say?
Exactly. It happened to me yesterday. I take jujitsu, and in jujitsu, the coach will run you through the move before you go and practice it. And so I'll find so many times I'll stand there and I'll watch the move being practiced. I'll listen to everything. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then we'll go to do the move. And I'm like, where do we start? I literally just watched this guy for 3 or 4 minutes explain it. I wasn't actually paying attention. I wasn't actually listening because I was in my own head. So it's amazing how often it can happen. So you have to like catch it and be present, which can be really hard to do in certain situations.
That's what I'm practicing. I'm practicing on right now personally.
Yes. Well, that's why that's why I encourage people and I train people in starting podcasts, because podcasting helps you become a better listener. Because if you want to be a good interviewer, because I know you've probably been on podcasts with people who don't listen very well and it doesn't go well. Their questions don't, there's no like linear progress of the story. They ask off the wall questions. Their responses don't make any sense. You know when
Or they talk
somebody's
about
not paying
themselves the
attention.
whole entire podcast.
Every topic, every point that you make turns into
Yeah, so
them
I'm
telling a
like,
story about
okay,
themselves.
sure,
Yeah.
I'm happy to whatever, but yeah, cool.
Why am I here?
Just a
Yeah.
face for you, but sure. I'd find a more famous face.
Yeah, you're just like you're queuing them up to talk about themselves. They're basically interviewing themselves.
I
And
guess if
you're
that's what
giving
they
them
need for the day, then they
content.
can, I'm happy to contribute to that. And I'm not saying which ones it is. But
Right.
awesome.
Hopefully it's not me.
No, I would
I don't
have
think I would be
probably
here
like,
if it was
yeah,
me,
full.
so I'm not going to count myself.
Definitely wanted to have you back. Yeah. So
Exactly.
I know a lot of listeners are kind of going through this. Of course, people have their purpose. They're trying to find their purpose, but they really don't. I think that there's actually a lot of people in the world that don't really know who they are. I think it's kind of, it can be the societal times and stuff too, but it's also kind of conditioned to, we have to be like what our parents are or who our friends are. What are the questions, some deep, give us maybe 3 questions for listeners to really go down. They want to go down a deep path of discovering who they are.
Yeah. One of the best questions I love asking is, what did you want to be whenever you were 10 years old?
Me,
What did you want to be when you were 10 years old?
I think I wanted to be an actress in Hollywood at that time. I'm trying, yeah. I think I wanted it
Why?
because
Why
the
did you want to be an
attention
actress?
and the fame and it just seemed glamorous and fun. And I think you probably a little bit about my background. It came from I didn't have a lot of attention given to me when I was a child. So I think I was starving for that attention. And I just love, I don't know, I still love, I should probably go back and do some more acting classes all the time I have.
So there's something, I mean, the attention and stuff like that's one thing, but there's probably elements to it underneath that also that that you're doing today that I look at it this way. If you're finding fulfillment in your life, then you're naturally doing things that you naturally just want to do and you don't even need a reason why. So when you're 10 years old, you're old enough to know what you love and you don't need a reason. You just love it. And you're young enough at 10 that the world hasn't convinced you otherwise and try to pull you in a different direction. And so I always go back to that question because I'll go back to my story of starting this podcast, the podcast that I have, because when I was 10 years old, I was doing pretend radio shows in my bedroom. I loved broadcasting. I don't know why. It's just, I just loved it, just like being an actress, right? Of course, I also wanted the attention. You wanted the attention, but there's more underneath that of, I love to connect with people. I love to ask questions. I'm curious. I like just broadcasting is just fun. It's just, there's something fun and exciting about it. And so I ask people that question, it brings up like these characteristics. So one time I was interviewing a woman that was, I don't know, I can't remember what she did. She was like a coach of some sort. I wish I could remember right now. But when I asked her this question, she said she wanted to be an archaeologist or a paleontologist when she was 10 years old. And I was like, okay, so why? And she started saying like, oh, it'd be really cool. Like you get to like discover these mysteries and you get to dig for treasure and you get to find out these secrets that nobody else knows about. And I was like, so how does that apply to like what you do now? And as we uncovered it, it was like she loved to understand people, wrap mysteries in people's lives, help them to uncover things that were lost to them their entire life and have these breakthroughs and these revelations. And I was like, so you are doing the archaeological paleontology work. You're just not in Egypt digging in the dirt. You're asking somebody lots of questions to like dig up these things, right? So that question for me is such a great question because it helps to, and that's the question I asked myself when I was leading into doing the podcast, like, what am I missing? What did I want to do when I was 10? And I wanted to be a radio DJ and a professional wrestler. The professional wrestler part, I don't know where that applies, but the radio DJ totally can see it. So that one to me just makes so much sense. It's so obvious. Another great question to ask yourself is, where do you have a lot of fear? So where is the fear? Why are you afraid of that thing? And then what would happen if you face the fear? Like, what would happen to you on the other side of that fear? Because that's where your breakthrough is. So like, what are you really afraid of on a daily basis? And how could you take baby steps towards it? So identifying those fears, man, there's so much power to that. And there's so much power in having a huge fear and then finally doing something about it. And that, I mean, you know that feeling, the victory you feel, like the weight, like you literally can feel a weight come off of your chest. I used to have just an outstanding or a long-standing, non-existent relationship with my dad. Like we didn't dislike each other. We didn't argue. We just didn't talk. And I always felt disconnected from him. And so at one point back in like 2021, I was like, I got to forgive my dad for this stuff. And just, my parents got divorced. I only saw him every other weekend. And I felt like he was a little absent, like emotionally, just all these things. And so I finally decided to bring it up to him. And it was freaking terrifying. Like, it was terrifying. Talk about fear. That was a huge fear. But when I did it, and he was at first kind of defensive and kind of mad and didn't want to hear it. And I knew that was going to be a part of it. But since that day, our relationship has doubled, tripled, quadrupled in quality. Like, to where I was just talking to him yesterday, and, he's helping me find a new car, and our relationship has flipped on its head. And if I never would have identified the fear, because those fears, like, you can't ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're running from a fear, you know it. Like, you run from it every day. You do everything to avoid it, right? You like anything you can to avoid it. Yet it's always like replaying in your head. So what is that loop in your head? What's replaying in your head? What is that fear that you keep running from? How could you? And I'm not going to say it's easy. That thing with my dad, it took me a couple of months just to build up the courage to have the conversation, because the conversation was going to be painful and it was going to to but it needed to happen. So that was a long answer, but that for me is one of the biggest
things. And I can go back to the communication thing too, is just kind of, the things that need to be said and to be communicated, the feelings that we have in relationships with other people that we don't really communicate. We just kind of slide it by, put a Band-Aid over it. And we don't really start to rip that Band-Aid off. It doesn't do the relationship any good.
Everybody complains about the person who all they do is small talk, right? The person that's always about the weather, or the person who always just talks about other people. And I guess some people are okay having very surface conversations, but I feel like people who love surface conversations don't ever dig beneath their own surface. And so I can't stand, not that I can't stand small talk, but I can't stand small talk when something big needs to be talked about. I don't mind having small talk with people. I'm fine with it. Mm-hmm. But I love to go deep, and I love to like uncover stuff. So I guess I'm kind of a archaeologist also.
I was like, "Ooh, that sounds fun! Digging in the dirt, finding all kinds of cool artifacts." Now I want to go be an archaeologist.
I know. I used to dig. It's funny though. When I was young, I would dig holes, and I would put stuff in the holes, and then like come back later and dig it up to like find the thing. And be like, "Oh wow, it's still there," So I guess I was kind of like that as a kid.
Well, Rob, this has been fantastic. I always learn so much, and I've especially learned a lot today. A lot of good communication things I want to definitely take back and resurface and rethink about, for sure. So for our listeners who would like to work with you or reach out with a question for you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, go to my website, leadimpacttransform.com. Lead Impact Transform. The acronym is LIT, for LIT coaching, right? So go to the website. You can set up a time to talk to me there. You can find out what I'm all about, find my podcast and all that on the website. And I leave it open. If you want to chat, set up a call, we can connect. And I'd love to just get to know you and ask you some questions.
Everyone definitely go down, check out his podcast, please. Not just because I'm on there, but please go check out the podcast. You got some fabulous guests, some good messages coming through for that. You're going to learn so much more. So again, thank you, Rob, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Alicia, thank you so much for being on my show and for having me here. It's always good to connect with you.